My name is Richard Furr, and I can say I am cloud hired.
That yes, come and join and get cloud hired. I'm cloud hired.
I'm Cloud hired.
I'm Cloud hired.
Hey, Go Cloud Architect family. I'm Cloud hired.
So I'm Cloud hired, guys.
So I'll just say I'm Cloud hired.
I'm Cloud hired.
I'm Cloud hired thanks to Go Cloud Architects.
It worked for me, and now I'm Cloud hired. Because of Go Cloud Architect program, I am Cloud hired. See!
I am Cloud hired. Thank you, Mike and the Glow Cloud team.
Welcome everyone. I am Mike Gibbs. I am joined by Alonzo Coleman. And today we're going to discuss the critical cloud computing skills shortage, specifically why there's such a critical shortage of solutions architects and cloud architects and enterprise architects, and why it's just so hard to find someone, despite a sea of people that are actually looking for work. So we're going to talk about that today. And we'll talk about some things maybe that we do. We'll answer any questions that you have. And I'm so happy to see you. Alonzo, before we begin, do you want to say some words? Alonzo is our Chief Marketing Officer. He's also a great cloud architect. But today, he's going to be discussing the role with me. So Alonzo, why don't you begin? Maybe have any free things that we have announced to the audience.
Oh, absolutely. First of all, it's always a pleasure to meet everyone near and wide. We've got people from all over the world from different countries, cultures, and we're all coming together synonymously to talk about the cloud and what it can do and how you all can become cloud architects. So we're very excited to talk about a lot of cool things that we have out here. Number one, we're talking about, we have a CCSP bootcamp coming up. It's going to be intensive. It's going to be detailed. It's going to be an awesome experience for anyone who wants to become or rather complement their competency and become a strong cloud security architect. This bootcamp is for you. and we want to make sure that you participate in that. Also, we have our webinar tomorrow. So it's going to be focused on generative AI, a discussion about that, how you can become a generative AI architect as well, what's going on in the industry, and how you can become a part of that too. And we also want to discuss our career ebook that you can download, get all the key information you need to be successful in your career, and also continue on with your career trajectory. So without further ado, we're ready to begin with Mike. He's got a lot of key things, and we're going to get into it.
All right, absolutely wonderful. And Alonzo, I know I didn't have a chance to tell you, but we actually swapped the week of the AI Architect webinar with the Cloud Architect webinar. So Thursday is the Cloud Architect webinar.
Okay, even better. Yeah, both of them are great opportunities for everyone to get started in.
Okay, so we talk about there being a critical skill shortage. And I'm not joking. If I were to post a position for a solutions architect, if I go through 5,000 resumes, most likely I won't have anybody that can actually do the job. Now, I will have a wonderful number of highly intelligent people that work very hard to get trained. And they worked very hard. But unfortunately, they didn't necessarily develop the correct skills. So they're good skills, they're valuable skills, and this is a person that worked very hard. But imagine your whole goal was to be an emergency room physician, and then you went to law school. And then you applied to the hospital and said, I want to be a physician in your emergency department. And they said, but you're a lawyer. And that's ultimately what really goes on in the environment that we typically see of. And that's why there's such a critical shortage of cloud architects, security architects, AI architects, enterprise architects. And that's why businesses are struggling. So that's what we're going to talk about. You know, maybe we talk about what we do. Alonzo's going to ask questions. Or maybe we talk about, presentations we give or sales calls that we do. Or maybe we talk about, what we document or any of the things we do as architects. Because that's what we want you to do. Now, there's also that free ebook that is going to tell you everything we do in our lives and our jobs. And it'll give you every skill that you need to learn, both the technical and non-technical. And the technical skills are very important. But they are technical design skills, not technical building skills. They're not hands-on building skills, they're design skills. So Alonzo will ask me questions and things like this, and I'll answer them. So Alonzo, what questions do you have for me about, people in architecture careers, or what we do, what we document, what we present, what we sell, any of that kind of stuff?
Absolutely, Mike. Yeah, so I'd love for you to kind of like expound on what are a list of some of the things that cloud architects do?
Okay, so when we're talking about a cloud architect or an enterprise architect, well, there's a lot of things we do. None of it is ever related to touching the technology, meaning we don't do DevOps, we don't do SysOps, we don't code, we don't configure, we don't touch Linux systems. But what we do is we create a technology roadmap. And that's the type of technologies that organization is going to use along with its people and processes to execute or achieve their business objectives. We do a lot of analysis. So if I'm going to go to a new client and I'm consulting, I can't just say you should go to the cloud or you could go to any technology because I don't even know what their needs are. But at the same time, I don't know what their tech is and the technical capabilities are. What if the capabilities are unused? Why would I recommend a new technology platform when I can use what they've already got, which they've already paid for, where the cost to them is almost nothing? So an analysis of the current IT systems. And think about it this way. If you're going to take something from a data center and maybe put it into the cloud, you need to know where your starting point is. And what do I mean by an analysis? Well, in an enterprise, you may have 50,000 plus IP addresses, 5,000 routes to deal with in the routing table. You may have critical downtime. You may have 500 applications that you're actually dealing with. You may be dealing with 100 different vendors by the time you're done with your cloud and your data center and your applications and your software and all those things. So kind of think about that. Now, we're always going to be looking for areas of improvement in the business that we deal with. If we just put technology in, we don't really make any changes. The technology has to support a business workflow or a business process, and it has to be correlated to the business architecture. So we're going to be dealing with a lot of looking for areas of improvement in the business processes and then figuring out how we can map technology to that. Now, as soon as new technologies come out for architects or things that are perceived as new, can we use them to provide a competitive advantage to our business? And that's going to be something that we deal with a lot. So, anytime there's an emerging technology, we need to go evaluate it and see what it can do for our business, learn about it, that type of thing. So, let's talk there's a lot of what we're going to do. Maybe we'll talk about it later. We have to manage a tremendous amount of documentation. Whether it's if we're at the end client creating an RFP, for example, or if we're working for a vendor, responding to the RFI, RFP, RFQ, creating your architectural artifact, creating your architecture, anything. And maybe that's a topic for a separate conversation. So the next thing that we're always doing as architects is we're creating gap analysis. Gap analysis from where the business is to where they want the business to be. Gap analysis between the tech now that we have versus the tech what we want. So lots of building a gap analysis. Now, a lot of things we also do is, we're the designers of this system. And by designers, I don't mean we design it ourselves. I mean, we lead a large team of people to design it. But at some point when it's time to be built, we're not going to be there anymore. We're going to go on to a new project. So by the time the implementation team comes in, we're going to have to write some good transition documents, let the transition team, the builders, know what we did and why we did it and how they did it. And hopefully you've been in communication with it the whole time anyway. But make sure you hand that off to the people that are going to build these systems in the most seamless manner possible. Now, there's going to be integrations that we deal with. And it could be one company buys another company. We've got to integrate their systems, or some new technology platform comes out. So there's a lot of systems integration. Like I said, the average enterprise has 200 to 1,000 different applications at this point. So lots of integration points. And that means we may facilitate meetings between the various vendors. We may bring in some application architects with various vendors as well as business leaders and key stakeholders and kind of finesse that and keep that up and moving the way it needs to be. Some other things that we typically do is we typically lead like an architecture review board. So for the primary cloud architect or for the enterprise architect, in a lot of cases, solutions architects are doing cloud architect roles and customers, we are going to have to create these teams to do things. And when there's an architectural change that needs to be made, it's going to have to go to a review board of people, maybe from networking and security and then big data environments. And they're all going to say, yes, they think this will work. And a lot of what you do will be creating these types of review boards. So you got a new project, you'll create this architecture team, you'll create an architectural review board. They'll all look at it and say, yes, 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 I think this is going to work, or no, change these things. So that's something you're going to do. You may also lead a business council. For example, when I was at Cisco, I was actually asked to deal with some of the key hospital CEOs, or so CIOs of the world or higher, and get them together once or twice a year and ask them what they actually wanted in technology terms in the future, so we knew how to design products for them. That's a common thing that you might find in architecture do, especially as you move up the ranks. So we do a lot of liaison communication, and what we're trying to deal with is getting all these business units who may not be talking together to talk with the technology team so we can design an efficient plan for the business. Now, any of these times we're dealing with things, we basically have to prove that the technology is going to be worth it. So we may be building an ROI model or building a business case or building a cost-benefit analysis for various IT initiatives. That's going to be the kind of thing we do all the time. A SWOT analysis, those types of things. So what else might we be doing? So we're going to be dealing with big data and how the organizations will actually use the data and AI that now goes together. We're really going to be trying to design things that are flexible and scalable that are going to meet the business's needs and make sure they're customized. They're not like coming out of a framework that's basically the same thing for everyone. A doctor prescribes a pill to a patient for a specific medical need. They don't just give everybody that same pill. So we have to do that with regards to how we design these scalable solutions. And we have to consider that sometimes the mainframe is the right way to go. Sometimes the public cloud is the way to go. Sometimes the private cloud. Sometimes a colo. We have to be always thinking what's in the best interest of our clients. And with that, that's about evaluation of all these technology platforms and what do we need and what's going to be best for them long term. Now, there's going to be a lot of vendor relationship management because, in every architecture, we're going to be able to 10, 50, hundreds of vendors. And if you're the architect that's coordinating this thing, you got to make sure the right things are coming in and all your vendors are doing what they're supposed to. So that's something else you might do. Now, a lot of times we develop disaster recovery and business continuity plans. Maybe what we want the business to do in the event there's a problem. What happens, like, for example, if there's a massive hurricane or a massive earthquake or war and the office needs to be closed, how do we keep that business up and running? From both a business and a technology perspective. Now, as architects, we kind of have to know what's going well and not. So we may bring in a technology team to actually audit various parts of our technology ecosystem. And we want to evaluate those audits and see what we need to do about it from a design perspective moving forward. Typically speaking, when it comes to an architecture, if we're going to do it right, we need to know what success is ahead of time. So we typically have to figure out what those metrics are. Are that metrics an increase in employee productivity? Is that metrics an increase in operational deficiency and a decrease in operating cost? Is that metric going up with regards to sales? So we have to be able to plan that ahead of time, design our architecture, and then measure that against the strategy we did to see if our architecture worked. And if not, what kind of changes we might need to make it better. So we do a lot of that. We may create what's called like a reference architecture. So for every demilitarized zone that this business will have, where it will have publicly facing applications, these are going to be the security standards. That's something we might be doing. I can tell you we're definitely managing an IT portfolio and prioritizing investments. This will yield a greater rate of return for the business. We will lead proof of concept. So a lot of times customers are going to see if it's going to work. And we architects will bring in a team of really smart engineers and they will go build it. We will be there. We will basically maintain it, manage it, maintain the relationship between the customer and their testing people and our proof of concept team. So we do that a lot. Security, well, we're constantly getting involved in security architectures. That means meeting with the security architects, meeting with the IAM architects, meeting with the compliance people, and potentially lawyers along the way, especially in a regulated type environment. So we're always looking for ways to get rid of technical debt and take systems that are going to be hard to maintain or expensive and find the best replacements for them. We're always looking for ways to make sure the data that we have as an organization is better. So we may get involved with the data team and start thinking about how and where they're going to store the data, how they're going to prioritize their data hygiene type practices, that kind of thing. We're usually involved in both mobile and digital strategies in today's world because of the systems and where they're actually interacting. I'd say we do a lot of development of integration plans across sites, across data centers, across clouds, across vendors. And a lot of time we actually spend doing reconnaissance on new technology and how we can learn and how we can get better. So those are the kind of things we do at Alonzo as an architect. And you can see none of that's covered in like an AWS Solutions Architect Professional or an Azure Solutions Architect Expert. They're good exams. They're systems administration exams. The name of something and how to configure them. Unfortunately, these are the things we do as architects, and none of that is related to configuration.
Wow, Mike. Well, that seems to be a lot of responsibility. So based off of all the lists and everything that you laid out, what would be the top 10 responsibilities or competencies cloud architects need to stay focused on?
Well, one of them is going to be on presentation skills. And maybe in a minute we'll talk about why presentation skills matter and talk about the kind of presentations we do. The next one is going to be leadership skills. Because as we went through all these things that we're actually describing, I hope you heard in common that it's people. And that's what I love about the architecture role. We're tying the people together from the business and getting them together, getting their needs together, and then figuring out what kind of cool technology and processes and procedures will make them better, and then building the team of the people that can create that, because no one person ever creates something big like this, and then making sure that we know what the metrics are, and then sending it over to the team to build it and make it successful, and then as soon as that's done, find a new project to help that client even more, or go to the next client. So there's a lot of that. Now, meetings. This is a job where there's a lot of meetings, and here's why there's a lot of meetings. If I need to get the vision from the client, I've got to go meet them. If I need to develop a relationship with the client, I can't do it via Slack or via text. I'm not going to have a relationship. Lots of times on video, lots of times in person. So we're just going to have to be there. We're going to be facilitating meetings, leading meetings with internal teams, leading meetings to respond to RFIs, RFQs. Every day's a meeting. There's lots of meetings. Now, I'll also say the ability to read, meaning the ability to go out there, find what you need, find information from a credible source, be able to learn it real fast, enough to be able to discuss it, and be smart enough to know to bring an expert on that technology when you go in front of their customer. So you know just enough to be able to be credible in a conversation, and you know who the person is when the questions go beyond your needs, because you got to be honest and ethical with your clients. I'd say that's one. I'd say good, strong knowledge of the underlying technology. And that is very different with how you build the technology. Knowledge of that underlying technology is what's under the hood and how does it fit together? What are the pieces and parts of that system? So that's very different than how do I code this? It's, for example, if we were going to think about a server, how many CPUs do we need on that server? How many cores per CPU? Are our applications multi-threaded or single-threaded? So if they're single-threaded, we use less cores, higher clock speed, that kind of thing. Is that processor going to be busy where we need more cache RAM? And if so, is it going to make a difference? How much stuff is going to need to be in DRAM in that server? Do we need to run calculations on a GPU? If so, how many GPUs do we need? Versus how many PCI slots and how much power does the thing, etc. You see where I'm going? So that's just one server on the environment, and we need to be able to think about it that way for everything that's going to fit together as opposed to doing it. So, and the last thing I say is writing. And I probably didn't get to 10, but I can tell you we're going to do a whole lot of writing. And actually, that could be a topic, you know, what kind of documents do we actually write? What kind of presentations that we give? And I'm hoping people are starting to get the feeling here that this is a big job. There's a reason they pay us a few $100,000 a year. There's a lot to learn. It's also the kind of stuff you need to be taught, because some of these things that we're going to talk about, and maybe we talk about the presentations, you're just not going to naturally know how to do. At least I didn't. At least I had to be taught. But, you know, that's up to you. But, you know, think of it that way. But, you know, there's so much that goes into what we do. So it's not like we can design it and then build it. I mean, it's going to take us and a team of potentially 50 people to design it, potentially upwards of a year. And then another set of team of people is going to go build it. So, Alonzo, what other questions do you have?
Let's see. One of the things that I think about, Mike, is this involves a great amount of strategy in how you deal with people, how you ascertain potential problems, solutions, and focusing on the problem and not throwing tech at it. So with that being said, I think the focus is on competency. So what would be some comparisons with certified-based training versus real-world training?
Yeah, so here's the problem. In a certification, you basically have to teach how to configure things. And certifications are more for that technician-oriented work or more junior-level engineering work. And why do I say this? They're about how to. When you get a more senior engineer, it's less about their how-to, and it's more about their optimization, their analysis, their finding the risks in the system, being able to reduce the risks in the system. And it becomes more about what's in here and less about here. When we get into architecture, we don't touch anything. And when we're dealing with something like cloud architecture, it's spanning across security, as well as identity, access management, across networking, across big data, across data science, across AI, across networking, potentially across video, across wireless, across voice and video. I mean, it gets everything and hundreds of applications. And how do they get used to optimize a business? So imagine being taught how to build a building and then having somebody ask you how to design a building. And unfortunately, learning how to build the building doesn't teach you how to design it. And that's why you have construction workers with 50 years experience that are still not being asked to design hotels or to design shopping malls or to design bridges, because it's a completely different set of skills. So that's the big problem. Now, there is a certification exam that is somewhat architecture related, and that is the Cisco Certified Design Expert. But what is that? They give you a business case scenario. They give you a technology strategy. You have to design the architecture, and then you have to present it back to the business. Now, that is an architecture exam. It's a little, from my perspective, it's really excellent on technology, probably the best technology architecture exam in the world. A little weak on business compared to what most architects do, but it's more focused on the technical architect, and still it's an incredible exam and incredible certification. But the things the cloud providers made, like the AWS Solution Architect Professional, it's more the name of a service and how to configure it. And it doesn't teach you how to do any of those things we described today. So it's just a training mismatch. And I'm not going to say don't get those certifications. I always recommend people get 2 or 3 professional certifications. The certifications help you get an interview. And then it's the skills you learn that make you great, and your communication skills that you prove on the interview that gets you hired. So any bait we can get for interviews is good.
Okay, Mike. So we've talked about the right certifications, the right competency, and what's needed. So we have to always, as architects, we don't look for the popular name brand. We don't look for what everyone's going for so much as we're looking for what's good for the architecture. So when it comes to well-architected frameworks, could you explain that along with the bias that may come along with it?
Yeah, so let's kind of talk about the well-architected frameworks. I believe they're very well-meaning ideas from the cloud providers on how to use their technology efficiently. Okay, so I said that. Now, here's the question I would ask for you. If you and 100 friends all decided to get into a bus and go to the doctor, and the doctor recommended the same surgery on all 100 of you without knowing if you were sick, had a problem, would you go to have that surgery, or would you run as fast as you possibly could? I hope you'd run as fast as you possibly could, because you can't make the correct diagnosis. You can't make the correct recommendation without a diagnosis. So if you look at the AWS well-architected framework, for example, it makes recommendations. Use managed services whenever possible. Use serverless. Use this. Now, that is the same as a surgeon saying, here's my recommended surgery for you, because they didn't assess the patient and see what the patient needs. So the problem is there are still good things that we can take out of the AWS well-architected framework, but we can't make recommendations. So what is the AWS well-architected framework? It's AWS's guidance on how to use AWS stuff. Okay, AWS stuff. Now, even if we had an enterprise that was on AWS, I promise you we're going to have 100 company stuff, not just AWS stuff. And we're going to be using other tooling and other systems that's not just AWS. And the well-architected framework kind of falls apart there. But it really is a well-meaning, well-intentioned, here's how you make the technology work on our platform. And I gotta be thankful that they did it, because they mean well. But the problem is between 70 and 80% of all cloud architectures provide no business value. I'm going to say that again. 70 to 80% of all cloud architectures have no business value. Now, I want to talk about what no business value means. It means if I'm a CEO and I invest $1 billion in technology and we get nothing for it, I just lost $1 billion. What could I do with that $1 billion? Fund a new division and maybe create 10,000, 20,000 new jobs. I could give it to my employees and give them bigger raises or bonuses and keep my best employees and motivate my best employees. I could do a lot with it if it's not wasted. And when you start seeing what's going on with cloud architecture, they did a survey and 92% of the respondents said we're involved in moving at least something off of the cloud. I think it was 80% of customers in the UK, or was it UK? I forget. I saw it just yesterday, are taking things out of the cloud and moving them back to the data center. The cloud's still big. The cloud's still great. It's a wonderful tool. It's just using the right thing at the right time. And how can we have a cloud first strategy? That's a doctor saying, I have a surgery first strategy. We have to apply the right technology to the right use case to provide the right outcome. In medicine, we have the 5 rights of the medication. Is it the right medication? Is it the right person? Is it the right dosage, etc.? And we need to run those types of calculations in every architectural decision we have. figure out what's in the client's best interest based upon where their needs are, where they want to go, their unique use cases, and then figure out all the platforms that we potentially have, evaluate all the trade-offs, and then make a recommendation. So that's the challenge with these well-architected frameworks.
Sounds great, Mike. Thanks so much for sharing that. So depending on the needs of the business, depending on the industries, depending on what their ultimate goals are, we can't just use templated projects and so forth. So could you expound on the wrong projects to get experience to become a good cloud architect?
Okay, so the right ones or the wrong ones?
The wrong ones.
Okay, here are the wrong projects. Working on Linux, clicking a bunch of boxes in the management console, writing a Terraform script, configuring Kubernetes, setting up a WordPress website, or any other certification-based lab. Because it has nothing to do with what we do. I mean, literally nothing to do with what we do. So, let me talk about just the kind of presentations I do as an architect. And I want to describe that so you can see, realistically speaking, why what we're doing is so different. And so if you're learning how to code, if you're learning how to configure, if you're learning DevOps, if you're learning SysOps, you're learning somebody else's job. And that's the biggest problem why we can't get cloud architects hired. Or why we get cloud architects hired, but why people can get every AWS and Azure and Google certification and still not get hired. So it's the wrong skill. So I always talk about we design, we present, we sell. I try to summarize it in that. But let's talk about some of the presentations you would deliver as an architect. You would deliver a presentation to either stakeholders, they could be business stakeholders, they could be tech stakeholders on the architecture vision. Usually it's going to be the C-suite or above, but the architecture vision is here's your business today, here's how your business operates today. These new technologies enable your business to operate this way in the future. Is this the way you want to operate your business in the future? Okay, here's your current stuff. Here's what we can do better by migrating to X, Y, Z. So that's an architecture vision presentation. We also do a lot of what you call current state architecture presentations. And what does that mean? It means long before we can think of moving, and periodically, we will have to present to the C-suite and say, hey, here's your technology and here's what's going on. You're currently in these 10 data centers spread across these companies and these 3 clouds. You currently have this much data. You currently have this much infrastructure. This much is fresh. Those types of things we're constantly doing. We're constantly talking about the future architecture and the future vision and the future technology platforms. So we also create technology roadmap platforms. And what is this? Okay, you want to achieve this ultra low latency, whatever training system. The roadmap is this. We've got to do your network first. And then after we upgrade your network, we can do your server infrastructure first. And then after that, we can deploy. So those types of roadmaps. We will need this feature developed by this technology provider before we can do this. And they only promise to get us that feature in 12 months, that kind of thing, if we move forward on their business. So a lot of looking at applications and their portfolios, and we're going to give presentations about, we recommend getting rid of these applications and migrating to these applications. We notice you're using 100 of these applications, which could be replaced by these 2, which will give you greater control, greater visibility, that kind of thing. Your clients are stating that this application is challenging for them. We estimate that's costing you this much revenue. And therefore, we recommend making these changes. Though that would be another type of, say, architecture presentation we would do. Now, we're going to have to also do presentations on governance. Okay, in this new strategy, this person's going to be the primary responsible. These people will be responsible. If a change needs to occur, it needs to be viewed by these people. So another kind of thing that we might actually be doing. Now, we might be working for a vendor like as a solutions architect or a cloud architect or an enterprise architect and consultant, and we're going to be delivering sales presentations on the product and this or the offering and what it can actually do for the end client. We'll definitely be doing cloud migration strategy presentations. Take this and migrate it to these 2 clouds and put 50% of this here, 50% of this here. Create your wide area network that's going to look like. Take this, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, definitely. We're always going to be involved in digital transformation initiatives. So how do we optimize this part of the business with this type of technology and those kind of things that we'll be dealing with. Constant presentations about security and what the organization's doing about security things. Are they mitigating risk with technology? Are they transferring the risk with insurance? Incident response procedures, who speaks, what have you. For example, if there is an incident, which lawyers do what, who speaks to the press, who stays back and fix it. We're always involved in those kind of things and presenting these kinds of things. I'd say we're typically giving presentations of a organization's business maturity, technology maturity, that type of thing. We'll provide risk management reports and, but the risks of this kind of technology thing going down and its impact on the business, the risk of a security breach. And these are just some of the presentations, Alonzo. So I kind of hope that kind of brought it back home.
Yeah.
Look, you can do any kind of WordPress website you want. And then when someone's going to ask you about what goes into an architecture vision presentation, or, talk to me about a migration strategy, how would you migrate this to this? Or my cost of capital is this. How do you leverage that information when you weigh whether you should use OpenStack or Nutanix versus AWS? That kind of thing. That's the mismatch. That's why it's so hard to hire people. They're certified in systems administration, but they want to work as an architect. And that's why we get people hired all the time. And you've seen it. You went through the training yourself.
Absolutely, I did. And it was a definitely boom for me because Mike and I, we joke a lot about, I said I went through the wilderness, if you will, because there was no 0 point of entry that I could find back then when I wanted to convert and transition into the cloud architectural space. So I read a lot of white papers from a lot of cloud service providers, and if I could stack them on top of each other, they would be as tall as I am, and I'm over 6 feet. So they talked a lot about how to build. They talked a lot about a lot of technical, I dare say it, jargon that I didn't understand. I'm like, okay, well, hold on for a minute. I don't know what this is. And every sentence that I read, I would have to go back to understand what it is, what it does, and how this applies to the overall architecture, which compounded the amount of time that I needed to read through the material. So based off of what I've learned with Mike is that let's look at all these cloud service providers here. We have, the top three: AWS, Google Cloud Platform, and Microsoft Azure. Let's create an agnostic example for this. We have American Airlines, we have Delta, and we have Spirit. All of them are different service providers that will take you to a specific location. They just want you to spend the money their way to get you where you want to go on their terms. You break it all down, you're sitting in a chair, you're paying for a tier of service depending on how close you want to be to the pilot, and be able to create a good customer service experience based off of what they offer. It's the same premise. So if you strip all those names away, you're sitting in a chair, they're taking you where you want to go for the price that you want to pay for. Look at the names and agnosticize what the meanings are. Block storage, object storage, compute, virtualization. Are we going to do it in the data center, or are we going to do hybrid multi-cloud implementations? What is it that we're trying to do? So by understanding all of the agnostic portions of this, you're able to readily and understand that and be able to expedite these concepts and be able to remember it, communicate its value, and be able to present it to stakeholders who care nothing, I tell you, and I do mean nothing, about the technical features, all the different coding that goes into building and implementing all of this stuff. They want to quite honestly know, is this technology going to make us money? Is it going to increase our market share? Are we going to be able to disrupt the market with these services, or at least command it so that we were able to increase or improve a user experience? They need to know these things so that they understand how to move within the industry, utilizing the architecture that you as cloud architects will be building in teams. So it's important for you to understand how the technology creates business value and not worry about the technology itself.
Yeah.
So with that being said, Mike, I see a lot of community builder opportunities. I see a lot of people getting certified as community builders that provide, say for instance, training and assistance. What does that mean if you don't have the requisite knowledge or the ability?
It's interesting. Someone in England reached out to me the other day. He wanted me to be on his YouTube channel or show. And I asked him some questions because he seemed like a really nice guy. And he was trying to help people out there. And I asked him some very intro level questions. Some were on storage, some were on compute, some were networking. Just, really basic stuff. And he couldn't answer any of them. And I said to him, and I don't want to mention his name because he's well-meaning, I said, you're going to hurt people. And he said, what do you mean? I said, since you really know almost nothing about cloud computing, now you're creating a community of people and you're giving people cloud projects to do and you're telling them what they need to know. But you need to be trained and you need to develop the skills and you're nowhere close to what you need to be able to work. And now you're teaching others. And no, I don't want to be part of this because what I do is come there. So whenever you have a community of people that don't know where to go, here's what they do. They ask their buddy, their brother, their sister, their cousin, and by the time you're done, you got a list of all the wrong skills. And I see it every single day. And if you're taught by the right people, wow, you go far and you go fast. Because we have really two ways to get to our goals. And sometimes we have to use the first approach. The first approach, which is usually the worst approach to being successful, is try. Try this experiment. If it works, great. Try the next experiment. If you fail, hopefully you didn't get knocked down too far. Try your next experiment. And some people make it that way, and some don't. And if you're trying to innovate, you have to do that. I'm sure Thomas Edison had a whole bunch of times before he got the light bulb and a few other things. So, sometimes you have to try and fail, and some things require it. But sometimes you don't have to try and fail. Sometimes you can learn from somebody who's already been there, not only done it, but also been successful. And then you don't have to make those same mistakes. And the problem is learning from people that don't know gets expensive, and people don't realize how expensive. So if I tell you that the average cloud architect earns $1,000 a day in the United States, and if I tell you that a really good cloud architect can easily earn double that, if someone spends 6 months making mistakes because they don't know where to go, they're losing, $20,000 a month for 6 months is $120,000. And if they try to figure it out themselves along the way, they probably still don't know what they don't know. They probably have gaps. And will they be successful in that first job? Or when that company is a little shaky financially in the next quarter, are they the first person that gets laid off? That's the scary part. So the plan is to, get the right training. If you can't do that, go find people that have been successful. The distinguished architect, the principal architect, the VP of architecture. Ask them what they did in their job. Ask them what they found the most critical skills to be. Ask them what they did to get ahead. What the less successful people did versus what they did. And that way, you know where to go. You're still getting that coach. You're still getting that roadmap. But just don't ask people that don't know. There was an old painting. It was called The Parable of the Blind. And you had all these blind people, and they were all holding each other's arms, and they were traveling in a circle. And that's what we're trying to avoid.
Well said, Mike. So we've talked about the correct skills. We talked about what we need to be successful, competent, ready to jump into these different scenarios that provides that cloud architects provide solutions in. Could you expound a little bit on what the incorrect skills are?
Yeah, so we're not engineers. And an engineering set of skills is the incorrect set of skills. A programmer set of skills are the wrong set of skills, software developer, whatever term you want to use. A DevOps engineer skills are the wrong set of skills. They're great skills, but other people's jobs. And I'm going to make it very clear. The cloud architect is nothing without the cloud engineer. Neither is the solutions architect. The engineers are the most technical people we have in the world. They're the best at it. And we need really smart people in the end, behind the scenes, to both guide us to get the tech right and actually build it. But our focus cannot be the technology. This is a consulting role. We're trying to take a customer that's got this architectural vision, this business goal, this pain point, this challenge, and get them from here to here and and get them to their goals. What we're not trying to do is build their website. There's people that can do that, thankfully, and they're good people that can do that, but that's not us. We're trying to figure out where the inefficiencies are in that business. How can we fix it? Maybe we have a retailer, and maybe that retailer's got declining sales, but maybe that retailer has some of the best data you can possibly imagine. Maybe they've been collecting data for the last decade. Maybe they have extraordinarily good data hygiene practices, and their data is really good. And if we understand that about that client, wow, can we make a recommendation engine out of that data so that when someone's on our website trying to buy, AI can recommend things that it thinks they're going to like based upon recent searches and cookies in their browser and increase sales? Probably. Or if we're dealing with an airline and we understand the airline's business needs and we can look at its pain points, okay, its challenges are here. Either they can't find somebody to fly the plane. Okay, can AI fly the plane? And if so, what needs to occur? What legal regulation needs to occur? What processes, what procedures, who needs to be involved? And that's sometimes when you get to real senior architect roles, you'll be working at that legal level as well. Or it could also be, well, maybe we can provide a backup AI pilot just in case something happens to the primary pilot. And maybe there's a way to safely land the plane. And maybe there's other cool things. And, oh, by the way, with all this data, maybe we can make better inferences on when we should buy our fuel option contracts. Or maybe a bank's got really good data and they want to create a better algorithmic trading system that's more accurate in when it buys and sells stocks based upon news and things that are going on. That's our job. And learning all those intricacies and all the pieces and parts that go together and how the system works and how they need to make it work, that's not engineering. In the end, it's kind of looking at the Lego pieces and then having the engineer focus on these Lego pieces underneath.
Well said, Mike. So I'm thinking about correct skills, thinking about incorrect skills. So which are the, I know there might be a little bit of overlap here, but what about the insufficient ones?
So here's something that comes up a lot. I interview someone and I'll ask them a basic competency question and I get the incorrect answer. And what I mean by this is if I ask someone, what is block storage versus object storage? How do the technologies work and where I should use them? If someone says S3, infrequent access, standard access, and glacier, and you put it in a bucket, thank you so much for coming in. It was nice to meet you. And a polite, not from me, but from most people, lie of come back when you have more experience. That means you failed the interview, not that you needed the experience. Now, by comparison, if that person came in and I asked them, could you talk about block storage? Could you talk about object storage? Could you talk about what they are for the most part, how they work, and why a business would use it? And that person didn't mention AWS, Azure, Google once. And they said, well, yes, seriously. So block storage and object storage are both two types of storage area networks, which means they're accessed over the network, which means ultimately the network is your ultimate performance limitation. Let's start with block storage. What's so interesting about block storage is it decouples our server and our storage environment, meaning we can store our hard drives anywhere we want as long as they're plugged into the network. And that's why it's going to scale well for your data center or your cloud provider. Now, normally the way a computer stores information on its hard drive, it tends to store it in something called blocks. And with block storage, it takes the data and stores it into blocks. And it looks and feels like a local hard drive, but it's not. So by using block storage, we can have data centers with 10,000 virtual servers in there, and we only need to have our storage in certain places. And that means it's easier to back up. It also means it's easier to create images of it. And oh, by the way, if we need more storage, we just add hard drives. It's real simple. Now, by comparison, object storage is a little bit different, and object storage is also 30 plus years old. With object storage, we take our data and break it down into an object. And what's interesting there is when we have our object that has some metadata or data about the data of that object. which really gives us the ability to do very interesting things, find certain parts of our data, integrate it into big data, make machine learning, artificial intelligence. You got a lot of power there. Now, it's optimized for write once, read many times, so we can't use it as a virtual hard drive on a server, for example. But it's going to be excellent for your big data, your backup and archival purposes, your software distribution, any photo, video distribution. If I got an answer like that, all right, I got enough that I need to. The person understands the technology. They understand it in the technology and context of the business. As opposed to geeking out on me and telling me AWS's features. That's where it goes wrong, because the person that we have to present to is ultimately an executive. They don't know what half of this stuff is. They know what object storage is because they've worked with it for the last 30 years. It's in their data center somewhere. They know this much about it, but their focus is business. Now you start making up funny branding and marketing names, and executives hate jargon, and they hate fluff, and marketing is fluff, so that tends to make it a little harder for you. Hope that answered that question, Alonzo.
Yeah, it did. It did indeed. So we got to spend a lot of time understanding what we know and what we don't know, so that we can be effective. So when it comes down to that, people not knowing what they don't know and thinking that they can train themselves for such a lucrative career can be detrimental to their career goals. So what are they supposed to do about that?
So let's talk about how bad the not knowing what you don't know is. And I've experienced it myself. When I left internal medicine, I was a nurse practitioner and moved into tech. I wanted to work in networking, and I love networking, and I was excited about networking. So I had my own little networking lab, and I went and got certified. I took this Cisco Certified Network Associate exam. And you know what? I was like, this networking thing's not so bad. I know a lot about it. And then I enrolled into the Cisco Certified Network Professional Bootcamp. And instead of being 2,000 pages of reading, it was now 10,000 pages of reading and a whole bunch of labs. So went through the boot camp, passed the CCNP, and I said, there's more to this networking thing than I thought. About 6 months later, I passed the Cisco Certified Internet Expert exam, the hardest certification exam in the world. And when I was done that exam and everybody said, Mike, you're an expert, I realized I don't know anything. I don't even know what I don't know. And that hit me because as soon as I passed that exam, it's like I was on Wall Street. Mike, you need to help design the fastest trading system in the world. And I'm like, router BGP, config T, incubate Ethernet. I had learned commands and things. And I'm like, okay, now what do I need to do? And that's when I realized what I didn't know. And that's when I started learning, and I got even more training. So there's that. So imagine if the average person doesn't know. They think they know, but they don't know. And the problem is, I think there's only two people that I know that are actually teaching architecture around, and it's David Lithicum, I've got a lot of respect for, who teaches our AI architect program, but he's been involved in architecture things forever, and us. Everybody else is trying to train sysops, DevOps, cloud engineering, and architecture in the same class as if it's the same job. But that's the equivalent of saying, well, you're going to be an airplane pilot, Alonzo. Mike's going to be an internal medicine physician. Joey over there, he's going to be an attorney. Harry over there, he's a CPA in the same 4-year degree. It'd be ridiculous because you couldn't do all that.
That makes a lot of sense, Mike. So we're thinking that that we have some questions. You've shared a lot of details. You shared a lot of what architects know, what they should know, what's relevant, what's not, and how trying to train yourself may sabotage or otherwise delay your career. So what we'd like to do is that we'd like to open up the platform for questions that we have, that you may have, and we see that there are a few. Keep bringing them in, and we're going to ask them as we see them, okay? So fire away. So our first question is reviews with Breeze. Thank you guys for this. I got my Azure Administrator last month, and I'm getting the Azure Solutions Architect this time, or for this one. What can I get after that? Would that be a focus on security?
Okay, reviews with Burrs. What's your goal? Where do you want to go? So one of the worst things you can do is just rack up certifications just for the sake of certifications. And here's what happens. If you have 10 certification in 10 different people's jobs, It would be like you walking into a physician's office and saying, doctor, airplane pilot, flight attendant, auto mechanic, dog walker, babysitter, accountant. And you'd say, well, if this person spent all their time learning all this stuff, they can't be too good at medicine. I can run out the waiting room. That's what I would do. And that's what happens when someone has a whole bunch of certifications that are basic junior level, meaning not professional level or above. And from the hiring manager perspective, what I typically see is that someone with an associate certification with a little more training, like 80% more, they might actually be hireable. So it's not impressing anybody, the associate certification. So what will help is focused. For example, if you wanted to be a cloud security architect, I might tell you that that you might get a CISSP, which is a serious heavy duty security certification. Then you might also get a CCSP, the cloud security professional one. And I'd probably get some cloud providers professional certification like the Azure Solutions Architect Expert or the AWS Solutions Architect Professional. But that would be for an architect. Now, if you wanted to be a cloud engineer, I'd still say do the AWS Solutions Architect Pro or the Azure Solutions Architect Expert because it's really an engineering admin cert anyway. And then I would tell you to get a Red Hat certified engineer and learn Linux along the way, and that'll get you there. And after that, I'd say learn some networking along the way. And after that, I would tell you to learn Terraform, and I would tell you to learn Python, and I would tell you to learn Bash shell scripting, and I would tell you that you'd need to learn Windows Server Administration. As you can see, completely different set of skills for every one of these jobs. And that's the key. So if you want to tell me where you want to go, I want to help you get there. The same way an architecture framework that recommends a technology prior to even knowing the business needs is a little on the scary side. But as it would be to try to make a recommendation. But if you tell me your goals, I really want to help you.
Yeah. That's what we're all here for, just to ask your questions, get them answered, and set you on that path to where you want to go. Cloud Doctor. Mike, you just touched on the question I want to ask. What do hiring managers look for? I see all these different terminologies and half have nothing to do with architecture. I'm so confused.
Cloud Doctor, what people are looking for is pretty simple. The first is the ability to do the job and do it well. I'll come back to that. And then I'll talk about the other 50% of what hiring managers want. They want to know that you're a good communicator and you can communicate well. And here's the reason. If you communicate poorly, you will have conflicts with other people at work, which is going to destroy the environment and reduce productivity. If you don't communicate well, you will make errors. And by making those errors, again, you will have more problems. So they're going to be looking for communication skill. The next thing they're going to be looking for is if they can trust you. So what I do is I always go down the person's resume because that's their source of truth. That's who they say they're supposed to be, right? So I go down that resume and I ask them questions on that resume. Now, if they can't answer the things on their resume or questions about the things on their resume, they just lied to me. Why did they lie to me? They made a fake resume about things they didn't know. Can't hire someone you don't know. So communication skills and then trust, very critical. The next thing people care about is your energy, enthusiasm, and passion. Are you excited? Are you going to be willing to work? Are you so passionate about it that when you need to learn something, you're going to go do it? Even if you have to stay up all night. That's what we're looking for. So there's that. And if you know less, but you have more of this passion, energy, enthusiasm, you're still going to get hired more likely. Now, after that, I also care if you're competitive. Because people that are competitive are going to fight to be the top, which means they get promoted and they also do a good job for me. And after that, they're looking to see if you're emotionally intelligent. Are you going to go in there? Are you going to cause conflict with the people? Can you work with people that are very different than you? If this person only thinks you should have yellow hair and you like green hair, are you going to have a conflict? Or are you going to yell at somebody because they're eating meat when you're a vegan or vice versa? I don't know. You run into all these kind of things. You want someone that's very open-minded and very emotionally intelligent, that's going to be the life of the party, so to speak. Not from a party perspective, but it's going to bring out the best in others and make everybody happy. Now, the next thing you're looking for is someone that's a good team player. So, you know, for the most part, I love the movie Rambo, but there's really no John Rambos out there. And same thing, you know, for the most part, everything big is accomplished in a team. So how do you fit into that team? Do you improve the team or do you damage the team? So that's something employers are typically looking for. And then the last is, are you willing to go above and beyond? So I literally had, I spoke to a manager the other day, and what happened is the manager had given a task to one of the people that was working for her. The person that was working for the manager sent a Slack message that could confuse the things. The manager called the person, and the person said, "You have no right to call me." And the manager said, "What do you mean I have no right to call me?" She said, "Respond to me via Slack or don't talk to me at all." And the manager says, "Okay, you're fired." And the person was so surprised, and she said, "Look, we're in a business where minimal errors will cause major problems for our clients. You could take $1 billion business down. So you don't want to communicate with me? Goodbye." And, you know, kind of keep that in the back of your mind. And I'm not saying that I would have done that, but I would have at least tried to re-educate first, probably. But the point is they need to know that you're going to be that team player. You're going to do whatever it takes. And I can tell you from personal experience, I took a job. It was at a tech company. It was back in 2001. And I was there for 4 days. And they announced a 30% layoff. And my manager, who was this, you know, tough guy from the Marine Corps, he called me on the phone and said, "Gibbs, you put in 16-hour days for the first 4 days that you were here, and I heard great reviews. So please keep at it at work. You're not being laid off." And that had to do with that grit or the push. So there's that. Now, Cloud Doctor, now we come to the competency. And the competency is going to be different for every single job. If I'm looking for an engineer, I'm looking for someone that can do all the things that are necessary in my role. If I'm looking for an architect, I'm looking for a person that's going to be doing the system design and business transformation and optimization. So that's why I said less. But I'll tell you this, 50% or so is just you and how likable you are. You know, when it's your first job, you want every one of those things. So, you know, we train our clients on how to be more likable and work on their emotional intelligence, work on their communication presentation skills. If not, maybe find a finishing school or find somebody that knows all these rules of which fork to use, which knife to use, which this to use, what to say, what not to say. It'll pay dividends in your career. I even took golf lessons at one point because it was appropriate.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, Mike, especially it takes strategy. It takes reconnaissance to understand how to meet the needs of your clients, whether likes, dislikes, and be able to be well versed to create those connections and ultimately build those relationships. So I think we have another question. Drifting Tangerine. Hi, Mike. There are a lot of courses which are available nowadays, which all claim to teach the right skills. How can one determine which is which?
So look at the person who created the course. Can you speak to them in some way, shape, or form, or will they answer your questions? Maybe in a live Google form, like a live Zoom forum. If they're not willing to take your questions, and they're not willing to speak to you, something might be a little creepy. So there's that. Secondly, I would look at the, I would look at the bios and the LinkedIn profiles of the people that had it. Did they work for big companies? Were they good enough to go work for a Cisco or an IBM or Microsoft in an architect type role? If so, that says something about them. If their cloud architect roles, for example, are companies that you've never heard of or ones that they made up for themselves, fake resume, do not learn from them. So I want to see what that person's done. I might also see, have they been published in major journals? For example, I remember I went from CIO Magazine to DevOps Magazine, Data Center Magazine, from Information Week, Tech Republic, Tech Radar, CEO. I was like in everything because they wanted to speak to me because they cared. Or is that person just making Instagram posts? what's their title? What was their title in their jobs? Were they ever in leadership? Were they ever anything like an enterprise architect, which is typically a director or a leadership at a big company? Were they a principal architect at some point throughout their career? If they weren't, I probably wouldn't want to be trained from them because they don't know how to be successful. So there's kind of that. And then I would look at the complete list about what's being taught and who's teaching it. So the reality is no one person probably can teach you everything you need. They can get close. So my strength is strategy and vision and leadership. Chris's strength is getting stuff done and making things operate, things that I would be a disaster at. Alonzo and I are pretty much synchronized in that strategy creativity world, which means neither one of us are ever going to remember the details of anything. So we need someone that's just as good, if not in the back end, of making sure that we don't forget. And, there's that. When it comes to AI, David Lithicum's teaching for us. Why David Lithicum? Because he's got 35 years of AI experience. Why am I not teaching it? I only have 20 years AI experience. I just don't think it's enough. I don't think it's good enough when I have somebody that's better than that. Why do I have people come from cloud providers to talk to my students? So they can get a perspective from somebody other than me. So they can hear from other architects. Why do we get business school professors come in? Because sure, me, Chris, and Alonzo have all been executives, and sure, we all hold MBAs, but maybe we want people that have a different framework or perspective than ours that could teach our students in an even better way. So I would look for that. And I would be very cautious of anybody that says you're going to save time by taking only my stuff, because that would be something that I would be afraid of. If anybody was, say, an associate architect or an associate engineer and they were producing content, I would run. What an associate is a trainee. And I've trained many of the associates. They're paid trainees. And if they graduate, they get a real job as a real solution architect or a real solutions engineer. And if not, they get removed from the company. So kind of think about that. I would avoid from getting information there. You do those kind of things, you're going to be great. And that's going to narrow you down to a very small number of people that can actually train you. For enterprise architecture, you'll see us. You'll see Penn State University. Not going to find much else out there. And that's okay, because as you get into careers that are more specialty, that are harder to learn, that there's no competition on because you had to get to training, that's why they pay so much. It's that macroeconomic supply and demand curve. And here's the thing. If I'm going to go out there and get a CompTIA A+, Net+, and Linux+, so many other million people have done the same thing. Nobody cares. They just don't care. But if I can go out there and learn the entire career and be so good at it, then, anybody will want me, and I have no competition because while everybody else is trying to learn DevOps and SysOps and Python for architect jobs, I'm properly trained and I'm going to be the one that stands out. So you have to do that. So if it's an architect class, for example, are they teaching presentation skills? I just talked about 20 different kinds of presentations we give. Are they teaching you the writing skills? And if you want, I'll talk about some of the documents we architects write for the next 20 minutes. I'd be happy to. I love talking about what we do as architects because I love architecture. Are they teaching you how to lead a group? Are they teaching you how to respond to an RFI, RFP, RFQ? Are they teaching you multi-cloud architecture, given that 98% of enterprises are not multi-cloud? If they're not, training's not going to help you. Have they taught you how to build a business case to show the customer the value of the solution? Are they teaching you how to interview? Are they teaching you how to negotiate? Are they teaching you branding? Did they bring in people with MBAs in marketing that worked in marketing to teach you how to build your resume and brand? If not, I wouldn't go for it. Because when it comes to going from where you were to where you want to go, it's a career transition. And whether you're going from a caterpillar to a butterfly, that is a transition. And unless you are able to show the world that you're really a butterfly, not a caterpillar, they won't see it until you're actually a butterfly. So you need some good marketing and sales strategies along the way. And that's why we focus on these things in addition to just teaching the job. And are they teaching design? Are they teaching building? Because you can't learn design by building.
Cloud Doctor. So, Mike, competency overlooks experience.
I don't know what you mean by that. Competency. Okay, so competency is much more important than experience.
Yes.
I've hired many, many people with zero experience, but I will never hire an incompetent. So Jennifer Ema, the mental health tech, for example, was hired by J.P. Morgan Chase with no experience, but she was competent after our training. Jimmy Houston was hired by Southern New Hampshire University. He was very competent and is super smart, but prior to us, he was selling landscaping gears. Balwinder Kerr was a stay-at-home mom. We trained her and got her hired as a cloud solutions architect at Microsoft. Delroy Batt was working on ambulances as an emergency medical technician. We were done with him. We got him hired at CDW. Coyote was a 24-year-old college student who got hired by AWS as a solution architect as his first tech job. Al Legister, for example, was a sales rep who got his first tech job as an enterprise architect. And I probably don't need to go on, but I could do this for probably all day, and it's kind of fun because I love when our students get hired. But yeah, that's because they're great. Now, who do I pass on? The person that's got 20 years experience who can't do the job. The person that's got the bad attitude. The person that's not excited, enthusiastic about the work. Competency always matters. That's why, the first job I got was a senior engineer, and within 3 months I was the lead architect. That's why people like Al Legister got his first job as a senior architect as his first tech job. Competency always trumps experience.
Well said. Yeah, I think, in all honesty, we've all throughout our career ran across someone who boasted about, the experience that they had. However, the term goes out the window when they've been in it so long, but the job and the performance doesn't meet expectation when it comes to the experience versus, people who may not have been in that job very long, but they're well versed, they're a team player. They get the team synergized and excited about what's coming next. And those are the people, fungible. These are the people that we want to work for, want to work with, that we want to hire on the team. So it goes a long way. Big brother in life. How many hours per week should we allocate for studying, Mike?
Big brother in life, how many hours per week should you allocate in studying for what? How many hours per week do you have available? And how quickly do you learn? So, having said that, as a rule, the more time and effort you spend towards getting to your goals, the faster you're going to get there. And the greater your tolerance for physical and emotional type pain, the easier the journey will be and the faster you will get there. And here's what I mean. One day, and it's kind of freaky, my wife took a new job. It was in central New Jersey, and we speak Greek in the home. In my youth, I had a Cuban girlfriend, so for a while when I was younger, I spoke fairly good Spanish. We dated for like 3 years. It didn't work, but whatever, nice girl. And when I went to my wife's office one day, I noticed after the first day, she had this Spanish to English dictionary, and she was like doing this in Spanish. All day. It's just like, I'm trying to improve my communication. We've got a lot of migrant workers here, and they speak Spanish. This was about 20 years ago, and I want to be able to communicate. I'm like, well, that's awesome. So I don't think I saw her for 2 weeks. I saw her, we had dinner, and she just locked herself in a room. And 10 days later, I walked into her office, and I hear, I'm literally translating it from what I remember. On a scale from 1 to 10, 1 is a little bit, and 10 is a whole lot worse than having a baby. How bad does it hurt? And I heard her say this in Spanish, and I looked and I said, what just happened? And she said, well, my translators didn't get my thoughts, so I thought I'd learn Spanish. And I say this because some people are freaky like that, and they can do that in 2 weeks. By comparison, some people need 1.5 years to get to their goals, even if they put 30 hours a week in it. And somebody else can get to that same goal in 15 hours. Big brother in life, you want to know the secret? It doesn't matter. We can all do it. And the key is that we build a reasonable plan, we do what we can, and we fight as hard as we can. And are you able, for example, to keep going when you get a studying headache? For example, when I did my CCI, I can pretty much tell you what the day was like. I woke up at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, and I studied for 3 hours. I went to work, came home, studied 3 or 4 more hours. I did that Monday through Friday, and on Saturday, Sunday, I'd wake up at 7 a.m., and I would configure labs until midnight. And why do I remember doing that? Because it was $400 a weekend from CC Boot Camp to rent them at the time, the routers for the CCI exam. And, you know, if I was going to pay $1,600 a month renting routers, I was going to get my money's worth. So that's what I put on there. But it only took me 6 months from the time that I said I'm going to work in networking, or so 9 months to the time I was a CCIE. So I was there. But I can tolerate pain. I'm a martial artist. I was used to it. So whatever the case is, big brother in life, know that whatever you want to do is achievable. No matter what it takes to get to your goal, it's going to be awesome. If you're asking about our training programs, I can tell you that, you know, we let you stay in the main parts of the program until you're hired. So we try not to rush you. We limit a few components, but the main components of the program are yours until you're hired. Now, I've got some people that are highly successful studying at 20 hours a week. Highly successful. I've got others that might only have 15 hours a week or a little less, and it may take them longer. I don't care, as long as they're hired in the end and as long as they don't quit on themselves. Hope I answered that question.
Totally agree, Mike. Judah. Let's see. I guess we'll boil it down to this, Mike. What would you say is the comparative demand from between cloud architects and generative AI architects?
Well, the demand for both is incredibly high. So let's talk about why there's such a huge demand for cloud architects and why there's still such a huge demand. So most of the cloud architectures out there, Judah, are disasters. 70 to 80% of them all need to be redone. So they're all going to get redone. And, you know, the first migration was taking stuff as exactly as it was and moving it to the cloud, or refactoring stuff in a ridiculous manner that never made sense and taking it to the cloud and still having it cost a fortune and provide no business value instead of what would be optimal. So now what you can see is, first, the cloud providers thought they could be high availability in themselves, and then none of the cloud providers could maintain high enough availability with their power failures and their hacking events and all those other things that we told people were always going to happen. So now 98% of businesses says I need more than one cloud. New cloud migrations for the cloud architects. Now, the ridiculous stuff that was put in the cloud is going back to the data center. And here's what I mean ridiculousness. You know, let's say I've got some high performance compute and I need these big bad servers, you know, with like 384 physical cores, like 6 or 7 terabytes of DRAM, and 100 terabytes of high-speed SSD storage. That's $300,000-$400,000 one time that I buy. To rent that on the cloud is about $6 million over the cost of 4 years. That stuff's going back to the data center because that was crazy to send over there. But the things that are more event-driven, boy, that cloud's really beautiful. The things that need more of that auto-scaling, dynamic loading tend to be better. The agility of the cloud, maybe we basically take 1,000 NVIDIA H100s and train a model and then take that model back to our data center where we bought 5 servers with 8 GPUs each, and that's enough to run it. And that costs, you know, a lot less than the public cloud. But the point is we're going back and forth, and that's the thing. So the cloud repatriation is job for the cloud architects. The private clouds, like I always taught our students, every one of our students actually works with an OpenStack cloud. Again, we're going to be doing something cool like that. So all that kind of stuff is very cool. And they're all new jobs for architects. Now, AI. How big is this AI demanded to be? Well, to put it into context, about 1.3 times the size of the cloud computing space in the next, say, 10 years or so. About 3 times bigger than all of our cloud computing spaces. How big is the need for AI architects? It is absolutely huge. And what is the supply? Nothing. Now you got people taking AI practitioner exams that are going to teach them the name of a service and how to configure it. Again, it's not going to teach how to design the systems. It's not going to teach any of those things that architects do. So, again, massive shortage. Critical shortage of the AI architect, critical shortage of the cloud architect, critical shortage of the good revenue-producing solutions architects, critical shortage. That's a great question, Judah.
Let's see. Well, I think we've concluded all of our questions for today.
Yeah.
But if there's anyone who has any last-minute questions, lay them out for us. We're here for you. I think about, we understand the urgency. It's been a interesting economy to say the least, and people are very eager to participate, get the cloud architect, generative architect, or whatever architect of your dreams. But just focus on the competency, and all the overall opportunities will come. So I think about, people ask, how long will it take? So I always think about a sponge, depending on the overall moisture of the sponge is how quickly it'll evaporate the information. So if you have a dry sponge and you drop it in the water or on top of a puddle, it may take a little longer for that water to get absorbed. But think about that overall sponge. It's already moist. It's already ready to take on even more information. It'll take in that moisture or that knowledge relatively quickly, but make sure you're able to wring it out just as fast, meaning that, are you able to communicate value, show your competency, be able to provide solutions, be a value add to the organization, to the team, to the overall goals of the business, be that sponge that's able to absorb as well as have that knowledge, pretty much wrung out of it for the overall needs of the business. So just focus on the competency, focus on those concepts, focus on the business value and all the things that come with it. Have someone join in on this endeavor to become a great generative cloud architect and so forth, so that you can be able to, for lack of a better term, iron sharpens iron. So measure your competency against someone who has been there, done that, is in the role that you want to be in, and you're going to be in a great space. And also importantly, surround yourself with people who are applauding, pushing you towards those goals, being accessible when you need those questions answered, and supportive of your overall endeavors. Your dreams are not always for everyone. Your dreams are not always meant to be communicated to others who may be naysayers, who may not understand the value of what a cloud architect brings to the table. So kind of be selective in who you share your goals and your dreams with, and just kind of make those overall milestones for yourself. Life, and just keep in mind, life gets in the way, and the more you plan life, the more life plans you. So kind of bake in some cushion time. Kids may need to go here or there. You might have a honeydew list. You might have holidays or unexpected things that may nibble at your time that you shared that you would do for yourself for that study time, and just take those incremental wins that you have and celebrate yourself, so that you said, you know what, I did well here, I'm going to do well there. Or if it's not so great, I didn't take those concepts in as much as I'd like, but I'm going to really drill in, buckle down, and continually learn. Forgive yourself if things don't go well, but continually never quit the process so you can make your goals happen, okay? So Judah also has a question. Do you guys have any conferences planned in the near future, Mike?
I am not sure. We typically do what we did. We did a last one about 6 months ago. We were thinking of maybe doing it on an annual basis, but we're actually thinking about it. And we're thinking about it because I love doing them. But my herniated discs and RSD have been a little bit rough recently, and travel for me right now is a little tough. I've been getting some extra PT for it. So it's going to depend on that. But, I kind of hope everything feels good. And if so, potentially soon.
Good. Accessory. How do you find the talent to assemble the team for a client's project?
Okay, great question. So let's say I'm working for Cisco. It could be IBM, it could be Microsoft, it could be anything. So the first thing that I'm going to do is, when I realize what the project is, I'm going to quantify the opportunity of that project. And here's what I mean by the opportunity. Both the revenue that I'm going to be bringing in, and if this is willing to be a reference customer that will say, or create what's called a white paper that says, Cisco and this bank collaborated together to enhance X, Y, Z outcome. Because if I do that, now I'm also creating a marketing collateral, which might mean I could charge less and still end up earning more for the company anyway. And so that's like a reference account. So there's that. So if I know that I'm working on a $100 million opportunity, which is usually pretty small for what I work on, but let's say it's a $100 million opportunity. The next thing I need to do is I need to accurately be able to forecast my, what do you call it? My likelihood of success. So if you can look at me having, say, a 70% ability to close a deal with a client based upon our historical experience, I then know that the value to the company, the expected value after they calculate the risk, is 0.7 times 100 million, which now means that this is a $70 million opportunity after we calculated the risk of being unsuccessful. Now I need to go back to my company, I need to go up to my management team, and I need to tell them, I have an opportunity that is worth 70 million. It is the expected value of this opportunity. I'm going to need this person, this kind of 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 person. Could you let other people know along the way and set it up? That'll be followed up by phone calls to grease the skids. Alonzo, I wanted to let you know, we're going through this. I sent you an email, and Alonzo, oh, this kind of opportunity, great. Let me tell this SVP. Let me tell this SVP. So the next thing you realize, if it's a big enough opportunity, a lot of people want to be on it. But now you've been there. Now the next thing you need to do is you need to sell these people to want to work for you. That means, typically speaking, at least for me, it's usually taking them to lunch or taking them to drinks or taking them to dinner. That's an expensive thing. But take them out, talk to them, talk about the project, see if it's going to work in their schedule. And if they're okay with it, tell them you'll speak to their manager to get them freed up on other things. That's typically involved. And in some companies, you have to go to the CEO if you're going to need, because in a lot of architectures, you might need $5 million worth of people, and it's going to cost the company $5 million. So you got to get their buy-in to make sure they want to do it. But that's typically what you do. And of course, what'll happen is as you work with people, you'll find out who's good and who's not good, and who you want to work with on your team. And good doesn't mean just the ability to do the job. That's not good enough, I can tell you that right now. If all somebody can do is do their job, it's not good enough. They have to be able to do their job when they say they're going to do the job. They have to respond to questions when you call them. They have to have a good attitude at all times, or as much as possible. They have to play nice with others. They have to be willing to do whatever it's going to take. That's the person you have on your team. That's also the person that gets promoted, and that's also the person that doesn't get laid off when employers do that as well. Hope that kind of helps. Please feel free to ask more if you've got another one. Otherwise, I'm going to spend some time with my wife and my cat because I don't get to do that much of it. And if I've scheduled it and it's free time, well, I'm going to take advantage of it for a change.
Yeah, and we definitely promote that for Mike. Mike really works very hard, so when he has that opportunity to rest, recover, and regroup, we're always for that. So I think I will put a dog ear in the page for today. We thank you all for joining us, providing your questions. We encourage you all to continue to ask questions and join us, especially for tomorrow. Big brother, you're very welcome, and thank you all for joining us and participating.
Thank you.
Definitely join us. As a reiteration, we definitely have that CCSP bootcamp coming your way very, very soon. We want you all to participate. It's going to enhance your life, enhance your career trajectory. We also have ebooks that we want to share with you as well. Please look at and scroll down for that free architect career guide in the link below. And also, we want to encourage and invite you again for tomorrow's webinar as well. We're going to continue on focusing on the Cloud Architect Development Program and how it's going to enhance your life. We really want you all to bring those questions in, bring any inquiries you have about Cloud Architect careers, and just join us on a regular basis. And just also make sure to like and subscribe on our YouTube channels. We really love having you all there with us, and we will definitely look forward to seeing you all tomorrow and the next times thereafter. Thanks so much.